We are looking at the debate stage in Miami, Florida, where in just a few hours, 10 candidates will take their places for the first Democratic debates, which, like nearly everything else in the time of Trump, will kick off against a backdrop of a president mired in controversy. And back in Washington, back at the White House, it's about to get ugly. Really, really, really ugly. If the reaction from the president and his allies to news that Special Counsel Robert S. Mueller will testify publicly before the House Intel and Judiciary Committees is any indication, the president is now running scared of the moment that could be created by wall-to-wall testimony from Mueller about Donald Trump's efforts to obstruct the FBI investigation into Russian meddling and his associates' nearly 150 contacts with Russians. The president reacting to the news today with his standard lies about what the Mueller investigation actually concluded.
The Mueller thing never stops. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. There was no nothing. How many times do we have to hear it? It never ends. It just keeps going on and on.
And while we've heard that before, it's important to point out that Robert Mueller did not say there was no obstruction. Nor did he say there was no collusion. Here's what Mueller did say.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. Under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is unconstitutional.
But Trump's rambling attacks didn't stop there. He introduced a new line of attack that seemed to confound even the ultra-friendly Fox Business interviewer.
He terminated the emails. He terminated all of the stuff between Strzok and Page. You know,
Wow.
They sung, you've never seen. Robert Mueller terminated their text messages together. He terminated them. They're gone. And that's illegal. That's a crime.
Someone should call him and tell him what terminated actually means. Donald Trump there, still reeling from his public display of instability on the world stage in that confrontation with Iran last week. Donald Trump, who denied an allegation of sexual assault by saying the accuser wasn't his type. Donald Trump, who rolls over and plays impotent and powerless as his cruel and incompetent immigration policies victimize children at our border. Donald Trump, upon learning that Robert S. Mueller will testify in an open hearing, he slanders the former FBI director and accuses him of committing a crime. And that is where we start today with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. With us at the table, former chief spokesman for the Department of Justice, Matt Miller, who never terminated anything. Frank Figliuzzi, a former assistant director for counterintelligence. He might have terminated a thing or two at the FBI. And former Democratic Congresswoman and Washington Post columnist Donna Edwards. With us in Washington, former senior FBI official and host of MSNBC's The Oath podcast, Chuck Rosenberg. Chuck, let me start with you. It's an earthquake that Robert Mueller will testify, but for the wrong reasons, I think, that are being discussed. Robert Mueller is not limited by the four corners of the Mueller report. Robert Mueller speaking to anything inside those four corners is the political earthquake. Robert Mueller testifying in a public hearing, and you flip to any page of this document, any single page, and you read that out loud on live television in what will be roadblock coverage, which means no matter what channel you turn to, you will see and hear Robert Mueller. That could be a cataclysmic political undertaking for the president. And don't believe me, just look at the president. The president in his bones knows that the last thing his presidency can handle is Robert Mueller reading a paragraph from this report on television.
Yeah, the president doesn't seem particularly pleased with the fact that Bob Mueller is going to testify. But I think you're right, Nicole. This is theater. Substantively, you know, those of us who've read the report, all seven of us, and those members
plus
of
my viewers,
plus your viewers, of course, plus the members of Congress who took the time to figure out what happened, already know the roadmap. They already know the details. But it is the difference, as we have discussed, between the book and the movie. I prefer books. Some people prefer movies. This will be the movie. And so there is a value, at least political, if not substantively, of hearing Bob Mueller sort of breathe life into the written word. Now, I don't expect him to stray from the report, But again, just talking about it publicly and talking about it on a day where, as you say, there'll be sort of wall-to-wall coverage, will help bring this report to life. And there's a value in that.
Not only is there value, that's the strength of the Mueller testimony to me. Everything's already in here. There's no gotcha moment for Donald Trump, Matt Miller. There's nothing the president, I have to say the president isn't among the 7 of us that's read it, but I think there's this false limiting sense in some of the commentary already, and this news is barely 15 hours old, and people are already saying, well, I don't know if he'll stray from the report. The paralysis politically has been that no one got through everything in this report. People wanted to move past it. Mueller testifying about its contents gives Democrats that sort of ledge to stand on.
I think that's right. And I think one thing the president understands is television. And you can see he's rightfully concerned this morning because he gets the power of Mueller showing up and speaking on television about a report that a lot of people haven't read. Look, I think there have been really 3 big inflection points since this investigation ended. The first was Mueller deciding not to make a call on obstruction. The second was the way that Bob Barr misled the public about the report and gave a head start for his spin before the facts could get out.
5.
That's right. Yeah. And the
5 appearances or public statements before we got this.
And the third was the decision by Democrats in the House to decide to treat this exercise as a fact-finding mission when the facts were already known. Well, this is a 4th big inflection point. The first 3 have all gone the president's way, and I think they have led him to the point where the end of this investigation was not the existential threat to his presidency that he once thought it might be. This changes things. This is an inflection point that might go against him if Mueller gets up and talks about this report, and if Democrats on that committee are skilled in the way they question him. He's not going to, I think, go beyond the report, but there are ways to draw him out to say things that are very, very damaging to the president.
And he's already said some of those things. He already said, if I could have said that the president did not commit a crime, I would have. He already said that they examined the president and they investigated him as an investigative office that couldn't charge him at the end of their probe. So, the credibility is gained by the fact that they've already made all of these assertions and assurances to the White House. But the piece, and I go back to Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who testified the same day as Donald Trump's last Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. In between Blasey Ford's testimony and Brett Kavanaugh's testimony, Donald Trump blinked. He saw her testimony, and he wasn't so sure about Brett Kavanaugh anymore. He watched her the way a television view. This is one of the, I don't know if we can call it charming, but one of the things that he does get, as you said, he gets the power of television, and he got the power of Christine Blasey Ford that morning.
This is why I'm concerned about the period of time between now and July 17th. I think it's going to get ugly. And we've already heard people say, well, the hearing is going to get ugly. We're going to see an American hero denigrated by certain members of Congress. And that is going to be really, really disgusting to see happen with a man like Mueller. But I'm predicting it's going to get ugly before that. I don't think the White House can constrain themselves. Look what happened with just Hope Hicks, someone who was a friend to the White House. And look at how many times they asserted bizarre immunity privileges that don't exist. I think we're going to see this White House try to constrain Mueller as tightly as they can. And I think the pressure is going to be very, very strong on this Attorney General to try and assert a privilege or constrain his former employee.
Well, let me press you on that, because there's already sort of a low rumble, a quiet din, if you will, in Washington around these questions. And I checked the Fox News website before I came out here just to know what that's going to look like. It's a good place. They don't hide their ugly plans very well. And there on the Fox News website was the plan for the hearing, that the president's allies are going to go after the FBI and go after the oranges of the investigation, as Donald Trump calls them.
Yeah, we're going to see it. It's going to be ugly, and it's all going to play out on our TV screens. But here's what people should focus in on. The bottom line is, even if Mueller sticks to the 4 corners of his report and simply recites passages of them in response to questions, as ugly as questioning gets, and as much as they try to disparage him and his former agency and the whole investigation and the oranges of the investigation, for the first time, most Americans are going to be hearing things like, on a ride to LaGuardia Airport, Trump turned to Gates and said, more information is going to be released by WikiLeaks. They've never heard that before. They've never read that before, but it's in the report. They're going to hear about over 100 meetings between Trump campaign officials and Russia, 100 contacts, over 30 different meetings by over 30 Trump campaign officials. They've never heard that before, and that alone makes Mueller's testimony valuable.
Donna, some of what they'll hear, and again, I hate this frame that he's somehow limited by the four corners. I mean, the four corners of the report are sort of the gold that he'll hold in his hand, what he'll read from, that people need to hear. Here's something that might sort of call into question Donald Trump's credibility when he says no collusion. The Mueller report says the investigation established that the Russian government perceived it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome, and that the campaign expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts. Now, you might have the public saying, I don't know what collusion is, but that sure sounds like dancing the tango together. I mean, this is going to let people use their own intelligence and their own gut check on whether something unseemly happened between Vladimir Putin's government and Donald Trump's campaign.
Well, and I've been advocating for, actually since the Mueller report came out, the importance of having Mueller deliver that information, because I think it's really true. The American public hasn't focused on it in a way that they will with the power of television, with Mueller in his voice, his calm demeanor, and his decisiveness saying these words, even if he just repeats the words that he wrote in the report. And I think that there's going to be value to that. Donald Trump understands that clearly. And anybody who says that Donald Trump is goading the president, goading the Congress into impeachment, pushing the Congress to investigate in this kind of way, and that he's doing that on purpose because it will work against Democrats, they're dead wrong about that. And Donald Trump's response to the announcement that Mueller would testify is absolute evidence of it.
Chuck, I don't want to gloss over what the president said. We're not numb. No one that watches this show is numb. I'm not numb. You're not numb. No one here is numb. But we are inundated. But what Donald Trump said on the phone was to accuse Robert Mueller of terminating emails. Now, it takes a little bit of a, like a pocket translator to figure out what he's trying to say. I just want to play that again, and I really want to bring into sharp focus what the president is doing with this smear.
He terminated the emails. He terminated all of the stuff between Strzok and Page. You know,
Wow.
They sung, you've never seen. Robert Mueller terminated their text messages together. He terminated them. They're gone. And that's illegal. That's a crime.
I think the word he's groping for in his jammies before all of his coffee, or maybe before his Ambien wore off, is deleted. But he's accusing Robert Mueller of a crime. Now, talk about how many people investigated the conduct of the special. I mean, haven't Strzok and Page's text messages been investigated by an inspector general at DOJ and FBI?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, they've been provided to the Congress, and in fact, they've been made public. So he may be searching for the word deleted. The word terminated, of course, makes absolutely no sense there. But the whole thing is really just a smear campaign, Nicole. Bob Mueller didn't break the law. Bob Mueller didn't terminate or delete emails. In fact, the only person Bob Mueller terminated was Pete Strzok when he removed him from the special counsel's team investigating Russian interference in the election. As soon as those emails came to light, as you will recall, Strzok was removed at Bob Mueller's insistence. And I imagine that wasn't a very long meeting. I'm sure Bob Mueller did not deliberate over whether or not Pete Strzok had to be removed. So this is part, I think, of what Matt Miller is referring to. This is part of that smear campaign in advance of the July 17th testimony. This particular charge makes absolutely no sense. Not only are the words wrong, but the underlying thing that the president is trying to describe never happened.
I want to also, though, sort of dig deep, and I know it's always a dark place when we all try to get into Donald Trump's mind, and I think I'll leave it to the medical professionals to try to understand why he landed on the word terminated when he was looking for the word deleted. And I'm not a friend or an ally, but I'm worried about him for landing on that word, honestly. But he is someone who is accusing Robert Mueller of a crime. When Robert Mueller found conduct around obstruction that could very easily be construed as a crime. In fact, if he wasn't the president. I think, Chuck, you've said, Matt, I think all of you have said that he might have been charged with the crime. So let me just put up the kind of seemingly criminal, again, you know, a TV viewer, they may debate at home around the kitchen table whether these are crimes or not. But the Mueller report, and if he just sticks to those four corners, here's what he might testify to on live television. McGahn decided he had to resign. This was the president's sitting White House counsel. He called his personal lawyer and then he called his chief of staff, Annie Donaldson, to inform her of his decision. He then drove to the office to pack his belongings and submit his resignation letter. That evening, McGahn called both Priebus, that was, I don't know, 4 chiefs of staff ago, and Bannon, he's about 4 political advisors ago, and told them that he intended to resign. Priebus recalled that McGahn said the president had asked him to do crazy bleep, but he thought McGahn did not tell him the specifics of the president's request because McGahn was trying to protect Priebus from what he did not know. The Mueller report goes on for many, many pages with a half a dozen other witnesses to Robert S. Mueller, who for some reason have not appeared on Capitol Hill yet. But one narrator, Robert S. Mueller, could bring to life the testimony of at least 6 witnesses who testified to Donald Trump's designs on firing Robert Mueller, which, I don't know, just to a normal viewer of The Sopranos or Ray Donovan, sounds a whole lot like mob conduct, as was described by Jim Comey, as is described by anyone that examined Donald Trump's efforts to fire and investigate the investigators.
In fact, mob conduct was described by President Trump. Remember, he said he'd been around flippers his entire life. And he also said that he would never pick up the phone to call the FBI. I mean, who does that, Nicole? Right. And so you don't need others to describe the president engaging in mob conduct because the president has described it for you. But to your point, Mueller can breathe life into this, even if he does nothing more than read those excerpts. The obstruction of justice section of the report, Volume 2, is replete with instances of conduct that would earn for anybody else on the planet a trip to federal court and ultimately to prison. And so, you know, I agree. I'm a little bit worried about one thing. I'm a little bit worried that, like with political debates, you know, people are looking for a quip or a gaffe or a moment, right, as opposed to really just soaking it all in. This is not a 30-second hearing. It's a 4, 5, 6 hour hearing, and you have to take what Mueller says in sum and substance. And I worry again that we're going to, not you wouldn't do this, but I worry that we, the body politic, are going to reduce this to a moment. And I think it's so important for everyone to just take in the whole thing, the sweep of the president's conduct.
I'm not worried that the TV viewer will miss the sweep of the conduct. I think my concern, Mueller, is around what we're all getting at, which is the ugliness that'll precede it.
There will be ugliness preceding it. There will be ugliness there. But, you know, it's one thing for the Republicans on that committee to attack, you know, former people from the FBI, you know, the members of Mueller's team, some of whom were in the private sector and contributed to Democrats. It's another thing to attack a lifelong Republican war hero like Bob Mueller. Those attacks don't land the same way. They don't feel the same way, I think, to the watching public as they would against other officials. And in terms of what he testifies to in that report, I think there's value in him just bringing the obstruction conduct alive through his words, even if he were just reading the report. But it's not just that. I mean, the question I think we would all want him to answer is this open question. If he wasn't the sitting president of the United States, would you have charged him with a crime? He's not going to answer that question, but he doesn't have to for his testimony to be valuable. Imagine if a member asked him, Special Counsel Mueller, is it illegal to direct a witness in a proceeding to create a false document that contradicts his sworn testimony? The answer to that is yes. Right. Has the Justice Department prosecuted people for similar conduct in the past? The answer is yes. Right. Mr. Special Counsel, did the president direct a witness in your proceeding to create a false document contradicting his testimony? The answer to that question is yes. That is bombshell testimony.
Absolutely.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.